Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Support comes from the University of Alaska College Savings Plan, helping you and your child save for college every step of the way, from diapers to diploma. More information at uacollegesavings.com.
The National Weather Service.
Hello and welcome to the Monday edition of Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Kimberley Hoeppner, and today is March 21st, 2016, just heading into spring. So when we're not here, always remember you can check for our information by going to www.arh.noaa.gov and click on the area of your choice, or you can always call our weather information line at 1-800-472-0391. And as always, if you're on the internet, go to weather.gov and /Alaska and look for our social media page to find the Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter links. Now, looking at your topics of the day, I'm going to move off the screen for just a moment. This is what we're going to be touching on this evening. We're looking at freezing rain across the Kuskokwim Delta as being the most critical weather as we head into the evening, and then the blowing snow along the Arctic and the northwestern coast is ongoing. We have a freeze and thaw across South Central as we had all the snow across the southern areas of the state. And then we also have a developing low pressure system in the North Pacific that you're going to want to watch out for if you're going to have activity in the Gulf as we head towards midweek. Now, looking at the freezing rain areas, it's actually just to the west. The area in yellow here is a freezing rain advisory. We're actually going to have a mix of rain and snow in this area, really from Bethel west, from 1 a.m. this morning into 1 p.m. on your day on Tuesday. There is a chance for freezing rain, but we're only expecting small amounts. Now, let's look at the satellite features, and we're going to really focus on this area of high pressure here, and then we have low pressure around Kodiak Island. So if you can see, the white clouds here are kind of streaming up and over the southern areas of the state, and this is along a warmer air mass. There's a good contrast here with the darker clouds across the western areas of the Bering and across the Aleutian chain. This area is a very cold air mass indicated by the darker colors, and yet another warmer air mass heading up towards the western areas of the Aleutians. Looking across the eastern areas of the state, there were some breaks in the clouds even across the South Central and the Prince William Sound earlier today. As we put this into motion one more time, you can see that this is all heading towards the South Central and interior areas, bringing a very warm air mass on through the southern half of the state. So here's the low pressure system that the weather is focused around today near Kodiak Island. It's a very weak system at 993 millibars with a trough extending across the southwest. Rain was across the Aleutian Range mainly, with some snow showers along a line north to south of Dillingham area. And some light shower activity continues across the west coast with some blowing snow along the north and northwestern coast. No new snow accumulation there at this time. However, the winds are gusting between 20 to 35 miles per hour out of the north and northeast along those northern coastal areas. Along the Bering, they're seeing winds along this tighter gradient here between 20 and 35 miles per hour, along with snow showers from the central areas where the Pribilof Islands are, south towards the eastern Aleutians and Alaska Peninsula. Conditions across the southeast were quite nice today, being that they saw some breaks in the clouds, and the rain shower activity stayed in the Gulf with very light activity across the eastern areas, a little bit more thicker across the western areas of the Gulf into the Aleutian Range there. Across the central areas of the state, breaks in the clouds there allowed them to get max temperatures up into the 40s as well. Now, low pressure system tonight will continue to spin right there around Kodiak Island, not changing much. The boundary just backing towards the west a little bit. And here's that freezing rain potential, mainly along the Kuskokwim Delta from Bethel and west. So the shower activity mainly along weak disturbances from the central areas. We'll see some possible flurries, no accumulations inland, and then just shower activity along the Bering, a little bit heavier with the trough axis so close and upper waves moving around this system. Now we have a weak trough along the southern areas of the Gulf, but mainly some light rain showers, possibly moving into the southeast during the early morning hours. Fog is expected across the Copper River Basin and north along the northern coast, especially near Barrow. As we head into your forecast on Tuesday, here's the low pressure system that we're going to be watching. It's going to be bringing some very gusty winds along this front and rain up to the southern areas of the Gulf earlier in the day on Tuesday. Winds will start picking up around a tighter gradient that forms across the southeast, so be aware that your winds are going to be gusting between 45 and 65 miles per hour along the outer waters here. So be on the lookout if you're in the marine areas that you are going to see some gusty winds developing on Tuesday. As well as for much of the Gulf locations, we're going to see those winds picking up between 30 to 45 miles per hour across the Gulf waters. A little bit lighter winds across the coastal areas as you move inland. The winds will be very light across this weak gradient, with shower activity remaining across the southwest. We'll see light freezing rain in the morning hours, and by the time we get into the afternoon, it should warm enough to change over to rain, and then we'll just see a very sharp gradient here along the coast, so all snow across the eastern areas of the Bering and on south towards the eastern Aleutian. Now this high pressure that's been in control across the western areas of the Bering, that's going to continue. It's going to start retrograding back to the north as this low pressure system begins to approach the western Aleutians. However, that system looks like it's going to continue to skirt to the south as it heads on an easterly pattern. Just along this low pressure system, there will be some patchy fog and some light rain associated with it, but no impact, like I said, for the Aleutian chain. And then this low pressure system will begin to weaken, lighter wind speeds for your eastern areas of the Bering on Wednesday. And especially note across the north and northwestern areas that gradient will start to slacken as well. So that gusty wind condition will not bring the blowing snow as severe on Wednesday. Now the low pressure, however, will be in full force across the Gulf and surrounding areas, bringing a swath of rain along the coastal locations back towards the Kenai and Kodiak Island. And we're expecting those accumulations mainly to be along those coastal areas, with some light shower activity making it further inland, but not much further than this low pressure system, as it's going to be weakening and the upper level flow stays well south of the interior areas. So taking a look at your temperatures today, like I said, we did warm up. Cordova had seen a high of 57 earlier, as well as Ketchikan, but most areas along the eastern Gulf saw temperatures in the upper 40s to lower 50s, with all Gulf locations seeing in the lower to mid 40s. Just inland, also across the Copper River and the Susitna Valley, the same. And then across the interior, they had a range between the mid 20s and the lower 40s. Fairbanks was at 38 at 4 p.m. this afternoon. And across the north and northwestern areas, we saw very cool temperatures still around the 0 degree and down to -5 degrees below zero at Point Lay, which was the coldest temperature during the afternoon. Looking at the southwestern areas, they stayed up into the mid-20s to mid-30s as that warming trend is continuing towards the coast. So you can see we've got those freezing temperatures still from Dillingham and west towards Nunivak Island. So that's where the problem areas are going to happen overnight. Across the Bering there, the cooler temperatures in place in the lower 20s, with 30s reported across the Alaska Peninsula all the way out towards Shimia. And then for your overnight low temperatures, not much of a temperature range across the Bering waters and Aleutians to Alaska Peninsula in the lower 20s to lower 30s. Across the Gulf coastal areas, they're going to stay in the mid-30s mainly, and across the southeast also in the mid-30s to the lower 40s towards the Dixon entrance. Across the interior locations with some clearing skies, they should be able to drop back down below 20 degrees. And as you head north towards the Brooks Range and along the coast, we'll see temperatures below zero in locations, but mainly in the single digits to lower teens. Seward Peninsula and south is where you see that temperature climb quickly into the mid-20s, which will be well spread across the southwestern areas with warmer temperatures aloft, causing the freezing rain possibilities. Now for tomorrow, we're expecting to climb to the same temperature ranges up into the mid to upper 40s across much of South Central, some 50s again across probably the southeast all the way back towards Cordova once again. The north and northwestern coastal areas will climb just above zero for the most part, except for that very northwest corridor staying a little bit cooler, and cooler once again across much of the Bering and the Aleutians, as we're expecting temperatures mainly in the lower 30s there. Looking at your flying conditions for tomorrow, widespread MVFR will stay off mainly across the Bering and along the Gulf waters, with some MVFR conditions possible across much of the southeast tomorrow, and IFR conditions across the Portage area and also the eastern areas of the Aleutian Range, with some conditions diminishing along the eastern Bering and along the north coast. In the afternoon, expecting your flying conditions to improve across the southeast, and then for the interior will stay pretty much the same with VFR conditions at Anaktuvik and both Adigan passes tomorrow. So nice conditions interior. For the southwest, they're going to see prolonged IFR conditions, and so rainy pass also in those same locations in the IFR. Now Windy Pass will be VFR as well as Isabel Pass, and we're looking at Mentasta staying VFR as well, and Tanita will be VFR with possible MVFR conditions at the east entrance. Now Portage should stay IFR for much of the day, with some probably MVFR breaks, but not for long as that next system heads up. And Chilkoot and White Pass will go MVFR in the morning to VFR late in the day. Now tomorrow, the freezing levels will be hanging around the southern areas of the Bering, extending up into the southern areas of the state with a 2,000-foot level, moving well into the southwest with a 4,000-foot level near the Dixon entrance. Looking at your icing tomorrow, the primary concerns are going to be along that eastern area of the Kenai and then along the Alaska Peninsula. Your jet stream for tomorrow, amplified pattern mainly across the Alaska Peninsula. Here's that ridging bringing in that southerly warm temperature through the state. So the strongest jet here is 80 knots out of the northwesterly area over the Aleutians. Looking at your pattern at now 9,000 feet, here's the low pressure system just south of Kodiak Island. Very strong winds on the east side of this, turning out of the southeast, pulling that warmer air into the southwest between 25 and 45 knots. Lighter speeds on the backside between 15 to 35 knots across the Bering, and weaker flow across the western areas of the Bering. Very similar pattern at the surface, as this is a stacked system, and we have ridging to the north bring a bit of a strong flow, 25 to 35 knots along that north coast, and then here's that strong flow right at 3,000 feet around the low center. So be on the lookout for those areas today as you head into tomorrow. And then just summing the turbulence up there, there you are, below 4,000 feet across the northern coast, and along the Gulf areas, look for below 4,000 feet, especially across the Aleutian Range here and as you head towards Nunivak Island. And also there'll be some turbulent areas across the central areas of the Bering. Now in just a moment, we'll be back with your marine forecast.
Good evening, I'm Harry Keeling, and on behalf of Alaska Public Media and the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation, welcome to Hangar Flying. Our guest this evening, Sarah Taylor, is originally from Syracuse, New York. She's enjoyed being around airplanes since she was young. Her dad was in the Air Force, and she became a crew chief on the E-3 AKwx and was stationed at Tinker Air Force Base in Oklahoma City. She came to Alaska last fall to join her soon-to-be husband who was an AKwx crew chief at Elmendorf. Sarah now works as a ramper at Alaska Air Transit at Merrill-Field. Welcome, Sarah. And thank you for your service with the Air Force. Sarah, when I first met you at Merrill-Field, I was struck by your pleasant personality and can-do attitude. You appeared to be a person who enjoyed their job. What makes you want to get up in the morning and go to work every day?
I like the variety of my job. I like being around airplanes. I like being outside, working with my hands, getting a little dirty from time to time. It's just everything about it just makes me want to keep going.
And I think you told me something else that's important, that you feel it is an important job. And it clearly is an important job. And another thing that you mentioned, what about the folks you work with?
Oh, they're great. Everyone at Alaska Air Transit has helped me sort of get used to being the new guy in a new city, and they've all been very helpful inside and outside of work. It's just like a great big family over there.
You know, Sarah, for young women out there who might like to get into aviation, and that, you know, our audience are aviation folks all over the state, pilots, mechanics, rampers, dispatchers. Do you think, are there any obstacles to women getting involved? You've obviously been involved, you've been a crew chief, and now you're working as a ramper. Any obstacles to you as a woman?
There's always obstacles to men and women, but women specifically would be your size and physical strength. But what you lack in strength, you can get into tiny places, and you know, smaller fingers can fix parts that men can't reach. So I think being a woman in aviation only works well if you have a good team behind you. It's mostly teamwork.
And the right attitude, which you obviously have. So, what do you see in the future? What are your plans?
I am hoping to maybe someday finish my A&P and become a mechanic. But for now, I'm just gonna keep working on the ramp. And
you'll get some credit, won't you, for your work as a crew chief?
Yes. You get the airframe counts towards that.
So you just have to do the power plant.
I'll just have to do the power plant.
Oh, I have no doubt you do great at that. You mentioned that, did you say you got here in October?
Yes.
So you haven't seen Alaska summer yet?
I have not seen a summer yet.
Well, I got to tell you, and I'm sure that there's folks out there in the audience that would say the exact same thing if they were here. Well, at least in Anchorage, what you see this winter is not what you're going to see here in a couple of months. And if you like it and you can put up with the conditions we've had in Anchorage this winter, you're going to love the summer. So, and if you like being outside, it is really pretty nice when it's July and August. So I'm hoping we're going to have a glorious summer, and you'll get a chance to enjoy it. Anything you'd like to add?
I would just like to say to any of the young women out there that are looking to get into aviation, it's tough, but don't give up, don't quit, and don't be afraid to ask for help.
Oh, that's good. That's good advice. And like I said when I introduced you, you did something for me, and I'd asked you to do a favor, and quite frankly, I didn't think much more of it, and I turned right around and you'd done it. And you said something to me that really stuck, and you said, when I tell somebody I'm going to do something, I'm going to get it done.
You always keep your word.
So good for you.
That's how my parents raised me. I always keep your word.
Good. Well, thanks for being on the program tonight.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed tonight's program. I want to ask a favor, and I mentioned it at one of the programs a couple of weeks ago. I need to get some feedback from you. And you can do that one of a couple of ways. You can go aasfonline@gmail.com or aasfonline. You can go either to our website or you can send me an email. But what I'd like to know is if you've heard anything on this program or any of the programs that the Safety Foundation puts out that might have made you make a better choice in aviation flying, in safety? I don't get much feedback. Did you hear something on this program that you thought to yourself later on, yep, probably something I need to do? So if you could give us that feedback, I'd really appreciate it. And the other thing is, if you'd like to be on the program, I'd love to have you on the program. There's thousands and thousands of folks out there in Alaska that have got stories to tell, and we've just scratched the surface. If you know of somebody that you'd like to see on the program, let me know that as well. Sarah, once again, thank you for being on the program. Ladies and gentlemen, until next time, fly safe.
Hello and welcome back. We'll start off with your ice edge and the ice edge forecast. So taking a look out across the Bering waters, we haven't seen any change in the ice edge here. Along the Bristol Bay area, still the same as we've seen over the last 24 hours, and we're expecting with those warmer temperatures that ice edge will begin to erode. Okay, so not expecting any growth there along the ice edge with those warmer temperatures coming in. Now for your Tuesday forecast across the southeast, look for a lighter flow. So if you're going to get out there, Tuesday's probably your day with a 15 to 10 knots across the inner channels. The outer waters will see 20 to 25 knots, a little bit stronger there in the north, and the inner channels will see seas between 2 and 3 feet, and along the outer waters between 6 and 7. As we head into your forecast on Wednesday, that low pressure system will be affecting the areas, with the inner channels going up to 25 to 40 knots along as you get towards the Dixon entrance there, with the stronger wind speeds across the outer waters between 40 to 45 knots. So gale wind criteria across much of the area, with higher gusts on your Wednesday up to 60 knots. So 55 knots as you head towards the north there. Look for seas between 5 to 8 feet across the inner channels, highest towards the south, and then between 16 to 17 feet across the outer waters. Across the west areas of the Gulf on Tuesday, expect small craft winds between 20 to 25 knots, 20 knots out of the east up there at Prince William Sound, and a northeasterly flow across the Cook Inlet down to Shelikof Strait. Mostly small craft there as well, between 20 to 30 knots. And then we'll see seas on that day 9 to 10 feet across the western Gulf. For the Prince William Sound and northern inlet, 4 feet, and then across the southern inlet towards the Shelikof Strait between 8 to 10 feet. Looking at your Wednesday, very strong winds will start picking up as well, and then we'll see 40 knots gale criteria for most of the western Gulf there. Lighter speeds just around Kodiak Island at 35 knots, continued northeasterly flow across the inlet down to Shelikof Strait, and then we'll see seas between 3 to 6 feet across the Cook Northern Inlet and the Prince William Sound, and the Gulf waters will see between 16 and 7-foot seas, and across the southern inlet, Shelikof Strait, between 11 to 13 feet. Looking at your Tuesday forecast for the Alaska Peninsula, primarily an east to northeasterly flow in this area. All lighter wind speeds except for just south of Kodiak Island, small craft advisories there, and then seas will be 3 to 7 feet across the Bering side and 5 to 7 feet also across the Pacific side. Wednesday, the flow isn't too bad, just small craft advisory around the Alaska Peninsula, stronger flow for the entire area, with 4-foot seas across the Bering and 9 to 13-foot seas across the Pacific, so a little bit higher there across the northern Pacific. Now the Tuesday forecast across much of the Aleutians is going to be, we'll see small craft advisory, except a little bit lighter wind speeds out towards Shemia, where the flow remains between 15 to 20 knots. And then seas on this day will remain between 6 to 12 feet, with the highest seas as you head towards the eastern areas of the Aleutians. As we head into your Wednesday, not much of a wind speed change there, actually just under small craft advisory for the area, all out of the north primarily, with a little bit more of a westerly flow along the eastern Aleutians. Seas on this day will be between 6 to 8 feet across the area. Looking at your West Coast forecast, we'll see mainly small craft for your Tuesday out of the north, with seas between 6 to 11 feet. And then as we head into Wednesday, we'll see a little bit of a lighter wind speed across the area, 20 10 to 20 knots primarily, with seas between 3 to 7 feet, a little bit stronger up there towards St. Matthew Island. Looking at your north and northwestern coast, look for stronger winds across the eastern Beaufort seacoast between 25 to 35 knots, and winds back towards Kotzebue around 20 knots. Looking at your day on Wednesday, we're expecting lighter flow towards Kotzebue Sound between 15 to 20 knots, turning more northwesterly along that west coast, and that easterly flow continuing across the northern Arctic coast there at 25 to 30 knots. Let's recap your forecasts as you head into the next couple days. I hope you didn't shovel too hard as we have this warmer temperature continuing to affect all the way up into the central areas of the state. So expect another variation of temperatures in the mid-40s to mid-50s across these areas. Light rain showers will continue across the Gulf areas and some creeping into the southeast across the interior. Flurries mainly, with mainly the activity staying across the southwest, with possible light freezing rain from Bethel and west. Across the Bering stays cold enough to remain all snow, and out towards the western areas of the Bering, high pressure dominates, with that pattern continuing through your Tuesday forecast. Now, this next system will be to watch across the Gulf waters and the southeast, bring winds up between 30 to 45 knots across the waters, and gustier winds across the inner channels of southeast. So the western areas of the state will see continuation of snow and rain, lighter flurries across the interior. However, those warmer temperatures will be creeping in that direction. The the southeastern Brooks Range on over to the northwest coast, still staying in a gusty wind pattern until we head into your Wednesday forecast. Expect those winds beginning to taper down on that day, and we'll see some light flurries remaining. The main weather will be across the southeast back towards Kodiak Island around this front that will be beginning to break up on your Wednesday. Although rain accumulations will be staying along the coast with variations between 1/4 to 3/4 of an inch. And then across the southwest, they'll be starting to go into a lighter precipitation pattern with the snow shower activity staying out there across the eastern areas of the Bering, lighter conditions across the western areas of the Bering. Thanks for staying with us, and I look forward to joining you tomorrow night.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.